Good morning. Welcome to Around the World with Dane Waters. I'm your host, Dane Waters, and as you can see by my background, we're talking today about the Middle East. But before we get to that, and we get to our guest. Let's talk about what's going on around the world. First of all, economic meltdown. Okay, let's talk about stock markets. All my friends, I'm a poor man. I don't have money in the stock market, but all my friends who have money in the stock market, they're losing a lot of it. Now, why is that? Listen, I'm not an economist, so I can't really talk about it. We're going to have an economist on the show next week to talk about all this kind of stuff. But it really is about tariffs, the impact of tariffs. And it's not just necessarily the tariffs, it's just the uncertainty of what's going to happen. I mean, typically, most presidents around the world, have a plan. They say, okay, we're going to impose tariffs, and then we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But it's like a roller coaster with President Trump. Uncertainty. Yesterday, he was unwilling to rule out the possibility of recession, and so the stock market is just really getting hit. So we'll have to see how all that comes out. But on top of that, some of the good news is that there's a new Canadian prime minister. We'll see how that happens because the trade wars, once again, the tariffs between Mexico and Canada, are pretty substantial. The new Prime Minister of Canada made it very clear that he is willing to fight till the end to protect his country. So we'll have to see who's going to win that war between Canada and the United States. But the impact, whether it's a 1 week war, a 1 month war, or 1 year war, or whatever it is, it's going to impact the economy of both countries substantially. So we'll have to see how that comes out. In addition to that, we're following what's happening in Ukraine. There's a big meeting happening now in Saudi Arabia, which we'll talk about in our next segment a little bit. Why is it happening in Saudi Arabia? Why does MBS and the Crown Prince involved? But Trump even came out yesterday and started talking about how he will not resume intelligence sharing and other support for Ukraine unless Zelensky actually resigns. Which is just crazy. The whole thing is just crazy. So anyway, we'll have to talk more about that. But there's a lot to talk about today, especially about the Middle East. So let's take a quick break with Around the World with Dane Waters, and we'll get right back to you. Thank you very much. I'll break it down into a couple of. Okay, Sammy.
Syria, Lagos has become one of the largest exporters of Egyptian ivory in the world.
Of the third world nation, where your votes will get stolen if you can vote there at all.
Oh, no. Welcome back to Around the World with Dane Waters. I'm your host, Dane Waters. I was just speaking to my guest, Sami Nader, about where I'm living. I currently reside in London, but travel the world. I leave for the audience out there. I leave for Asia for a whole month coming up next week, and I'll be broadcasting from Taiwan, from Vietnam, and from the Philippines, and probably Singapore as well for the next month, talking about what's happening in that region. But Sami, how are you today?
I'm okay. Hope you're doing well as well.
I'm doing great. It's been too long. It's probably been what, a year and a half, 2 years maybe since I've
Maybe
spoken to you.
2 years. Since then, a lot happened in the Middle East.
Well, I leave and all hell breaks out loose. Is that what you're going to say? I was the stable factor? No, no, it's clearly not the case. So let's get started. So we'll talk for about 20 minutes. And we'll take a break and we'll talk some more. So let's just deal with where you are right now, Lebanon. So you have a new president.
I'm in Beirut now. Things have drastically changed for the last 3 months. After 2 years of constitutional void, now we have a president elected. And more importantly, we have a functioning government. What is a government that is different from all the prevailing one for the last decades, where the upper hand was where Hezbollah got the upper hand. This time, for the first time, Hezbollah is not controlling the institution, whether the legislative institution or the executive power. So it's a totally different institutional landscape. However, the challenges are still real, starting with the arms of Hezbollah. Hezbollah, despite the huge blow that he has been dealt by Israel still have arms in its hand, and the big concern is will he use the arms internally, meaning against the Lebanese? So this is the number one challenge. The second big challenge is the possible impact of what's the drastic events that are happening in Syria to Lebanon. So it looks like the Ahmad al-Shara, the new president of Syria, has several challenges in front of him, namely his capacity to maintain order and to maintain Syria as a united country, given the fact that some sectarian groups are today trying to get some distance from the central power, whether the Druze, whether the Alawite, or the Kurds. As you know, Syria, like Lebanon, is a diversified country formed of different sectarian groups, and the integrity of Syria, or Syria as a united country, is today at stake. So what we are witnessing is a huge geopolitical shift, a huge race between regional powers, mainly Turkey, Israel, and Iran, trying to increase their area of influence across the Middle East. And we are trapped into this regional war powers, regional powers wars in the Middle East.
There's a lot to dissect here. So let's talk about this. Well, you talk about Turkey, Israel, and Iran. How does America play into that, and how does the new Trump world play into that? Are they a factor? Are they going to have an impact?
So America under Trump administration is taking a back step. It's taking a step back regarding what's happening. It used to be a supporter of the Kurds. It used to have a very strong hold in the eastern part of Syria, and Trump has signaled that the Middle East is not that important for him, that his major concern is with China. He wants to marshal his forces to contain China, and it doesn't look that the Middle East is a priority for it. So, and this is where Turkey jumped in and trying to increase its foothold in the Middle East, starting with the northern part of Syria and the northern part of Iraq. And this could lead actually to a disorder in the Middle East. Now, the good news, in my view, is this race was at the detriment of Iran influence in the region. And if it wasn't the backup that Turkey was offering, and other regional powers as well, to the militant group under the leadership of Ahmad al-Shara, former al-Julani, Iran would not have been kicked out of the Levant, meaning Syria and Lebanon. And this started with the huge blow that Israel dealt to Hezbollah. Because Hezbollah, after October 7, has started on October 8, one day after, to wage a war against Israel to support Hamas. And this initiative proved very detrimental for him. It ended up with his leadership decapitated and his military arsenal substantially decimated. So this was the start of Iran decline in the region, and it ended with pro-Turkey movement advancing to Damascus and overthrowing Bashar al-Assad, who is the strong ally of the Iranian regime.
Let me ask you, okay, so now Iran, I want to come back to Iran and talk about their nuclear weapons and possible attack by Israel, but what's the relationship between Turkey and Israel? I mean, if Turkey becomes a more dominant player, is there animosity between the two countries, or do you think that they could try to quote unquote divide up the region and work well together?
This is a very good question, actually. They have a very ambiguous relationship. On one hand, both of them are allies of America, at least theoretically. Turkey is still a member of NATO, despite the very hectic behavior of Erdogan. And Israel is a close ally to America. Both of them have another point of agreement, which is to contain Iranian influence. However, in Syria, they have a different agenda. In Syria, Israel is in favor of supporting the Kurds. It is in favor of maybe a divided Syria or a decentralized Syria. Actually, its main concern is to have a buffer zone along its border, so not to have Turkey potentially at its border. While for Turkey, the existential threat is a Kurds' autonomy inside Syria, because this would threaten Turkey as a united nation as well, keeping in mind that 30% of Turkish population are Kurds. And if Kurds start to seek autonomy in Syria, this could be a very bad example from a Turkish perspective, from a Turkish government perspective, to Kurds in Turkey who will feel emboldened by this move. This is why Turkey is trying to deal, even if it has to recourse to military action, to any possibility of Kurdish autonomy, and more particularly of the military group of the Kurds inside Rojava, meaning the eastern part of Syria, the YPG. So it can tolerate anything in the day after, but not the presence of YPG as an armed group inside Syria, because this would have a ripple effect across the region in Iraq and even inside Turkey.
Where does Saudi Arabia fit into this? I mean, they used to be a big supporter of Lebanon and what's happening in the region. I know Trump has a very good, strong relationship with them. So where do the Saudis fit in?
This is another very good question. Saudi Arabia shunned this part of the Middle East for at least since 2011, and because they lost hope of supporting Lebanon. They used to support Lebanon, to support the Lebanese people. We had excellent economic ties, but because of Iranian influence, they lost hope that any kind of support will end up emboldening Hezbollah. And Hezbollah was using Lebanon as a platform to wage fierce campaign, communication campaign as Saudi Arabia, and he was lending a strong hand to the Houthi in Yemen. However, since the collapse of the Iranian influence, Saudi Arabia saw a great geopolitical opportunity to jump in and to lend support and to the Lebanese government that is for the first time, as I was mentioned, not under the control of Hezbollah. So, and they played a major role in electing Joseph Aoun as a president, who was the former commander of the army. So Saudi Arabia felt a great opportunity, a new role that is very needed even by the regional powers, because a Saudi role in Lebanon will help Syria getting back to what the Arab community and Lebanon getting back to the Arab community, which means that Turkey will have less control over Syria and Iran will have less control over Lebanon because Saudi Arabia is trying to get back these Arab League members to the Arab family.
Well, listen, for Lebanon, one of the biggest things is that economic development, right? I mean, the country really can't do much, even with a new president and prime minister, unless there's the economic ability to grow the country. So who do you believe will be the economic savior for Lebanon? Will it be Saudis? Will it be, I mean, who's going to come in and give the money or make it possible for the country to recover?
The one who has the cash, to answer very, very straightforwardly. And the only part or the only country that has the cash today is Saudi Arabia. Maybe the European will help a little in rebuilding the infrastructure while if they see the opportunity. But it used to be the case that Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries were the one that over the years supported Lebanon financially. However, this is not enough because there are conditions to this financial aid, and this condition is reform. And the party here that is more than necessary to trigger the reform is the IMF. Unless there is a deal with the IMF, between Lebanon and the IMF, this is the condition for financial aid. There are two conditions for financial aid. First of all, to have the Lebanese army controlling without any challenge, and to have the monopoly of arms, ensuring its full sovereignty over Lebanon. That means to demilitarize Hezbollah and implementing 1559 UN resolution. This is the first condition. So one army having the arms in that sense. Secondly, a deal with the IMF. Lebanon has signed an agreement with IMF that is a roadmap for reforms. What is more important that the money that the IMF could pour into Lebanon is the IMF endorsement, because this will build trust. This will encourage international donors, and most importantly, will encourage FDI, meanings for direct investment in the country.
One thing I haven't thought about, with Trump in America pulling out of USAID and all this kind of stuff, well, how important is the U.S. to the IMF? I mean, I would imagine we're a major donor to the IMF. Do you think under the Trump administration in any way that'll be pulled back and that's going to harm the investments around the world?
This is very alarming, in fact. First, you mentioned USAID. Let me tell you that some key institutions that were ensuring, that were the building block of America's soft power in Lebanon have been dealt a huge blow. University like AUB, hospitals like AUH, American University Hospital, American University of Beirut, Lebanese American University, have been getting at least 80 million a year from the USA. And this was crucial for them to survive in a country that was going through several consecutive crises, and they were ensuring, most importantly, American interests in the region. The interests are not only geopolitical, they are geocultural, and these were key institutions that were the building block of American influence, cultural influence in the region. So when it comes to the IMF, there is a big concern today at the international level that America will withdraw from IMF, which is one of the building blocks of the international order that America put in place after the war, Second War, which is the World Bank on one hand and the IMF on the other hand. And America, as you know, has 17% share of the IMF, which is the only country that has a veto power. So I think with this veto power, this may give more leverage to America to control the IMF policy, and it is a less argument for Trump to withdraw. And I believe if it will withdraw, this will have a dramatic impact on at the international level. Up to now, Lebanon did not sign this agreement with IMF. He does not count on IMF to get finance, but he needs the endorsement of IMF to trigger the roadmap of reform and to pave the way for international donors for their financial support.
It was interesting. Well, listen, we need to take a quick break and then we'll continue this conversation. But I mean, thanks for being with Dane Waters and Around the World with Dane Waters. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Thanks.
Syria, Lagos has become one of the largest exporters of illegal ivory in the world.
Live in a third world nation where your votes will get stolen if you can vote there at all.
I lost hope that the Republican could ever make it.
Well, we're back real quick.
I fully agree with you. I mean, this is
so welcome back to Around the World with Dane Waters. I thought there'd be a little bit more there, but while I was having a side chat with Sami, but we're talking about Trump in the election, and you know, listen, I've said it many times on this show that I'm a lifelong Republican, but as a Republican, I just can't make sense of what's happening in the United States. And to go back to your point, Sami, about USAID. The Secretary of State announced yesterday that they're canceling 83% of all USAID contracts, and the 17% that are left are just going to revert back to the State Department. And for those of you who have been to Washington, D.C., about 2 blocks from the White House, there's a thing called Federal Triangle. There's this huge, beautiful building called the Ronald Reagan Building, and it's the USAID headquarters. And the fact is, within 24 hours, they actually chiseled the name off of USAID. It's mind-boggling to see what's happening in the United States when it comes to foreign aid. But foreign aid is critical, as Sami talks about. It's like we have soft power, and the vacuum of that, maybe not as much in Lebanon, but around the world, in absence of that, in places like Nigeria, without the USAID dollars, other countries, whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, or whether it's China, is going to step in and take that over. And I think Americans are being very short-sighted and not understanding the influence of that soft power and those donations. So let's talk about Trump and investment. One thing that always mind-boggled me, listen, Lebanon and Beirut specifically is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Okay, it is. And when Trump is talking about bulldozing down Gaza and building a resort there and hotels there, and to me, I'm thinking, okay, if you want to invest that kind of money, invest it in Beirut. I mean, it would really be go a lot further. But what do you make of what's happening in Gaza, and Netanyahu and that whole situation?
I mean, first of all, what has been done on October 7 has been detrimental for the Palestinians because it was a pogrom from all points of view. That is something that is not questionable. However, what followed and namely the fact and namely this amount of destruction that happened is deepening the divide between Palestinian and the Israeli. And the big problem today is there is no solution inside. Everyone is talking about the two-state solution, but this alternative, I think, is not holding anymore. Even the Palestinians are questioning this solution, given the fact that Israel is continuing its settlement, and namely in the West Bank. And the war took place in Gaza. However, what is at stake is the West Bank. And this is threatening the whole stability of the region, because what you will make of the 2 million living in Gaza, would you send it in Egypt? What impact will have this on Egypt? And if we're talking about another transfer of Palestinian in the West Bank, or some of them to Jordan, which is today something that is debated, it's not a secret anymore. This will threaten Jordan of collapse, at least the regime as it is today. So what is at stake is that the whole equilibrium in the Middle East, and we are in a deadlock because there is no alternative to this two-state solution. There is no visibility of the day after. Everyone is talking of the day after. Trump is pushing his Riviera solution or his Riviera dream for Gaza, but no one is buying in. And even the Arab, what they put as an alternative during the last Arab summit last week in Cairo, even this one is not flying. No one seems very excited about it. And their concern is the only alternative today, or the only possibility is to resume the war. And this would be detrimental.
Well, listen, I noticed that Trump, I mean, the alternative solution that the Arab nations put forward, Trump just said no. I mean, and that the desire of the U.S. administration is to still develop Gaza and to move the Palestinians out. By the way, how many Palestinians roughly are there in Lebanon?
There are, almost 300,000 to 400,000 in Lebanon. Most of them are living in camps. And this was their case since 70 years from now, since 48, even more.
Well, so let's just talk about, you bring up an interesting thing about the two-state solution. I mean, honestly, listen, if Saudi Arabia decides they're not going to support a two-state solution, it's dead, right? I mean, because if the Saudis abandon it, there's no one powerful enough to make it happen. And what happens? Let's play this out. If the two-state solution is off the table, what do the Palestinians do? Do you think that will lead to more violence? I mean, I do believe.
This is a great question. The Palestinian today would opt for the previous South Africa model. That means a one state, and they would have to fight the apartheid because they will live in Israel, controlled by the Jews. And given the demographic growth, they will come at one point where the situation is not tenable anymore, not sustainable for the Israelis. This is why the far right in Israel is looking for the transfer option. But the transfer option would mean an ethnic cleansing, something that will pose, something that will challenge the Israel at all levels, the ethical level, and it will have, against it all the international community, because this is something that is against international law.
Well, no one's going to take listen, no one's going to take 2 million Palestinians. It's just not going to happen. I mean, as you said, Jordan's not going to take them. Egypt's not going to take them. Lebanon's not going to take them. Syria's not going to take them. Iran's not going to take them. The United States is not going to take them. Those 2 million plus Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank are not going anywhere. Okay, they're just not. And so, and as much as the Israelis would love that to be the case, what are they going to do? Put them on barges and put them in the Mediterranean? It's just no one's going to take them.
You're right, Dane. You're right. But look at what happened in Syria. You had 8 million of Syrians leaving Syria. Since 2011. Look, 6 million Ukrainians left Ukraine. And there are concerns that this could happen as a result of increased military pressure. Because this happened.
Yeah. And then in West Bank, listen, my prediction, and I really hope I'm wrong, and that goes back to the West Bank, is that, I think the next round of violence is going to be in the West Bank, where
definitely. Because this is what is at stake. This is where the Israeli far right consider the Samaria and Judea, which is the West Bank, as a historic part of their historic Israel. And this is their perspective. And those people today are controlling the government. And this is to stay for there is no left anymore in Israel. So there are extreme right, and this situation is set to prevail for the seeing for the next decade maybe.
Well, I mean, listen, this goes back to, I hate to bring everything back around to Trump, but it's relevant because Netanyahu and Trump have a very strong relationship, right? So, and I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu, feels very emboldened now, even more so, that he can do pretty much whatever he wants to do because America is going to be supportive of him. So, I think that if the Israelis decided to take a more active role in the West Bank, there's no one to stop them. There's just not, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's a great concern, because the Saudis aren't going to stop America. No one's going to stop America from supporting Bibi and taking the West Bank. So I think that that's going to happen. And I'd like your thoughts on this. Let's just take this back to Iran, because the power broker there, it used to be, not as strong now, as you say, are the Iranians. So what happens to them? If there is talk, and I would bet as well, that there will be an attack on their nuclear facilities probably in the next 3 to 4 months. And what happens then? Does Iran have any ability to wage any additional war?
I mean, definitely, but if this will happen, this will embolden Iran narrative. And the Iran narrative that says that all diplomatical solution has led to nowhere, your idea of a two-state solution didn't pick up, and the only way to deal with Israel is through military means. And if this extremist position of Israel is maintained, that will embolden Iran narrative. And this is problematic, and this will threaten the whole Arab world, which is controlled today, fortunately, by moderate government. But they will have to deal with an Arab public opinion that is against moderation, that feels angered by what's happening with the Palestinian people. Still, the number one cause for the Arab world is still the Palestinian cause, and this will have detrimental effect on the image of America. We have been talking about soft power. Look at the last UN at the last vote in the United Nations, where America was kind of isolated, and you had all the rest of the world. So you have like the West and the rest of the world, and even the West is today divided. Even the Europeans are not sided with the America, and this will have a detriment. And this is where, it's very true what you were saying. Other countries will jump in, like Iran, like Russia, like China, trying to lead this rest of the world, which is today a majority. Now, fortunately,
yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, it's like, what's happening in West Africa specifically. I mean, we talk, this show is based in Nigeria, and there's a large Lebanese community in Nigeria. So, but this is something that Nigerians, because we try to talk about why these world things should matter to people in Nigeria and around the world, right? And the reality is that with the U.S. vacuum, you're going to have Russia play a role in Nigeria. You're going to have China play a role in Nigeria. And Nigeria is going to be divided, and it could lead to internal civil war as well. So, these are real life issues that can impact everybody on this planet. And so, but practically speaking about Iran, what can they do? I mean, let me just say this real quick. My concern as an American is that if the Iranians get too upset, I mean, then we're going to end up in another period of major terrorist attacks around the country, because that's where their strength is. But what can Iran actually do to Israel at this point?
In the short run, I would say not much, because military-wise they have been diminished. But look at what happened in Iraq, 2003. 2003, Iran felt the threat that they will be next, that the US, after invading Iraq, may move to Iran. And they did not have the capability to stop that. So they tried to gain time. And starting 2007, they started to organize rebellion and resistance against the American, and this led to the unilateral withdrawal of America. So on the short term, Iran, because it has been kicked out of Lebanon or very diminished militarily in Lebanon through the decapitation of Hezbollah, because it has lost a key ally in Syria. Today, its influence in the Middle East have substantially decreased. However, they could try to kick the can down the road. They could buy time and wait for the right opportunity to step up because they can get advantage of so many anger in the region, so many sectarian problems that have not been solved from the crisis of the state and the executive power all over the places. And they are very good at exploiting this kind of breaches in the countries around the world to maybe mobilize. They have been mobilizing the Shia community in Iraq and the Alawite in Syria, the Shias in Lebanon. They may resort to this kind of problem if America does not regain its soft power, and that means its diplomatic and financial support through its allies, not only, through good alliances in order to help building strong states in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq.
Well, listen, there's a poll that came out a couple of days ago. Excuse me. It showed that 75% of Israelis believe that Netanyahu should take responsibility for October 7th and resign. Okay, now, that's a pretty powerful number. However, what has made Netanyahu as powerful as he is and has allowed him to stay in power is conflict and war. Okay, and so now that things are diminishing a little bit, this is where Iran, I believe, is the next big target. But what's happening real quick? Has Israel? I don't believe Israel actually fulfilled their promise in Lebanon, right? They didn't pull out completely, did they?
No, they didn't. Not they didn't. They didn't pull out completely from Lebanon. They are keeping 5 outposts inside the Lebanese territory, which is, by the way, as well emboldening the narrative of Hezbollah, because Hezbollah has claimed to fame that he was fighting Israeli occupation since the legal government and the Lebanese army did not manage to do that. So, despite the agreement, the ceasefire agreement, if Israel keep its occupation of Lebanon, this on the medium term will be a source of a problem, because it will embolden Hezbollah that will wait for the right time to jump in and mobilize its community. And even the Lebanese population in general, 2/3 of them are today against Hezbollah, but they don't like at all if Israel keep occupying Lebanon.
So let's go back to Lebanese people. I mean, it's a very divided community, so how do they feel overall about Israel? I mean, are they concerned that there will be continued conflict, or are people in Lebanon feeling like we have a time of stability?
The conflict did not stop. It diminished. This is true, but like every day you have an Israeli attack against Hezbollah. So the Lebanese people are very concerned. They are worried about their daily life, about their security, and about their economic well-being. And despite the ceasefire agreement, they don't feel today comforted with the outcome. First, on one hand, Israel is continuing to occupy Lebanon, is continuing its military operation. On the other hand, Hezbollah is keeping its arms. So they are in the middle of fires, and they are really concerned that the war may resume at any point, and the kind of stability they are living today is very fragile.
But why doesn't the IMF, not IMF, the military, the Israeli military, not the Israeli, the LAF, excuse me, just go in there and take out the weapons of Hezbollah? Why don't they engage directly with Hezbollah?
This is a big issue. At one point, this has to happen. The president said that this is an internal problem the Lebanese have to deal with. I think that this requires a popular support by all the community. It still necessitates some support from the Shia community. And I think in the next election, they will be crucial because they will show how much the Shia community held Hezbollah accountable for what happened. And they have to decide that they want this arm to be under the control of Lebanon. And if this will not happen, my view and my fear is this would lead to the partition of Lebanon, because part of the Lebanese will not accept that one party keep the arms while the others are not.
Yeah. Well, listen, Sami, it's always a pleasure. Sadly, we have to wrap up here. It's good to see you, and I do plan on getting back to Beirut at some point. But anyway, well, thank you very much. Anyway, thanks for being with Dane Waters and Around the World with Dane Waters. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations, and we look forward to chatting next week. Have a great week. Thank you.